Awesome.
Awesome. Hey,
Hi,
so
Sam.
nice to see you. Hi. Um, hey, everyone. My name is Sarah. I am the textile anthropologist. Many of you are seeing this on Substack, and we're going to post the transcript below of this interview. But we're talking with Shagoh today. She is the founder of Folk Lounge and a lot of other creative projects. I'll let Shagoh tell us about what Folk Lounge is about. But basically, this is a new series where we are talking to people who are on the ground working to either preserve, conserve, or uplift traditional textiles in one form or another. And so it's really a conversation to understand how that work gets done and hopefully inspire people to do more of it, because I do feel like more people need to be working in this space. So I'm really excited. Thank you so much for agreeing to chat with me today.
Totally. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you for having me. I
Would
love
you
that.
please introduce yourself and the work that you're doing with Folk Lounge?
Yeah. Your intro was awesome because I think, for me, I definitely connect with the words preservation space, and the work started out more. I'll do my intro too, but the work started out really from my burnout and from realizing that I was just constantly running, trying to be efficient and please the world, and absolutely destroyed and depleted. And I realized I wasn't really taught to be, and there was no places for me to practice being, where I'm not measured on any scale. I'm not trying to do anything for anyone, and just practice being and not be goal oriented. And I realized this is kind of a place that we are arriving as a society to, really exhausted and really constantly, in all states at all times, operating on being useful. And especially for people in the female body, how exhausting it is.
Mhm.
We need rest, and we need time to dance and sing and sew and paint and play, and adulting sometimes elbows all that time out of life. So my name is Shagoh. I'm the founder of Folk Lounge. I came across this work 3 years ago. I founded Folk Lounge 2.5 years ago in March 24, and it kind of crawled up on me. I had massive like saboteurs and voices that were trying to stop me from doing the work, but my body would shut down and would not move forward in other areas of work till I would start to make progress with Folk Lounge. And it was almost like the voice of the universe demanding that this is my work and it has to be done and it has to be spoken to. So the work started with embroidery socials, which are free embroidery events, communing with land, meeting neighbors. And I started that organically in Los Angeles. I'm based in Los Angeles. I am originally from Russia. Russia, the part of Russia I'm from is considered Asia, because I'm from Vladivostok. And I am of Russian and Armenian descent. I am half Armenian, half Russian. But because I look more like my mom, people forget that I am half Armenian. So people only remember that I'm Russian. So it's interesting to be at the intersection of cultures, like a small culture and a large culture, and the heritage that comes with the two. For me, coming into folk lounge work, I realized I am deeply passionate about ornamental traditions and igniting the power of ornamentation in all people. And some of I think the agency has awakened 2.5 years ago. I didn't have the words always. The words have been coming this year. I had held a lot of workshops and led a lot of talks and events with museums and other cultural institutions. And so I realized that I am spending my time advocating for understanding ornamental traditions, because they connect to different cultures, mythologies, creation stories, symbolism, religion, and other important nuances and big themes of material culture, and it's so much fun to dig into that. Like there's so much cool things to discover. It's endless. And so I decided that I guess that's what I do, is combining this format of lectures and stories and an educational format with a making format, which can be different parts of embroidery or dyeing or sewing. My background is in fashion design. That's my undergraduate education. I worked in luxury fashion. I've always been inspired by quality and craft. I was totally not a fit for luxury fashion. It did not fit me. I bounced my head in New York. I hated it actually. And then I went to Paris. I really liked Paris, but I did not want to move countries again. It was like, that was hard the first time. I'm not doing that the second time. And so I actually then switched and worked in software design for 16 years. I worked in the tech sector. I'm still very much a designer, and that's a big part of my ethos. But I feel like coming back to craft, the message I was hearing is that the work that I'm doing, it needs my skills from user experience. It needs my skills from building complex enterprise software. And so I feel like I'm arriving back in my backyard, which is craft and making and these ancestral traditions, reclaiming Slavic and Armenian ancestral traditions that were lost through different trauma, both family trauma or political trauma that countries go through. And so for today, let's see, today is like summer 26. I feel like I'm arriving at a place where there's different practices for folk lounge. There is kind of research, which is similar. And I think that's where you and I connect, because there's like this really big thirst and curiosity for us to like dig up all the knowledge of the ancestors. I also sometimes talk about the ancestors have technology too, that we think we are like the top of the civilization, and the AI software we have is the only type of technology. And I think embroidery brought me to a place where I realized embroidery is a very sophisticated technology, and there's other sacred technologies that we've forgotten along the way. And so reconnecting with our ancestry through knowledge and research and practice of actually embodiment and decorating or sewing and moving our bodies also brings us back to these other technologies that we've forgotten. And for today, I basically moved from, I still host the embroidery socials once a month, which are like spaces for community, and was accumulating material and jumped into hosting weekly classes in fall. So I'll stop at that because there's like a lot of different branches I can go to, but that was like a big overview of like what really inspired me and continues to inspire me.
So there's a lot of things that I'm kind of like picking out of that description of the work that you're doing. One of the things that really is kind of hitting me, that I don't know that I really connected with this when we've talked about this before, but that you were actually new to embroidery when you decided to start teaching or to start, hosting these socials. Could you talk about like how you made that jump and why it was important for you to do it at that time?
Yeah, totally. Let's see. Trying to sort in my head what's the best way to approach the topic. I think you and I share that apparel foundation. Like we have hardcore apparel training. We both went and graduated from a department that taught us like all the skills from pattern making to making technical tech packs. You and I also share this like very sweet past where we both had our brands that we built, and you actually inspired me to build Wolf Industries, and I've told you many times. And so I ran a small kids brand for from 2013 to 2021, and it burned me out. It killed, like, half of my burnout was like, it killed me because I was working full time, and then I had baby number two. Don't regret a second of it. But
I am
when
running a business though, because Wolf Industries was like my business that I ran. I know a lot of people watching this. I used to have and like a custom wedding dress business, and I had a line of wedding dresses, and it was, man, it was like, it was getting unmanageable by the time I kind of transitioned into tailoring. But I feel like Wolf Industries was a lot bigger, and I always was like really admiring, because I don't know that I registered that you were working full time as you were running Wolf Industries.
Yeah, at a startup. Yeah, it's just totally suicidal. Things we did. But it was good experience. It was a stepping stone, right? Because it taught me the agency of selling wholesale. I developed patterns. I learned that I'm a good designer. I can make things people like love. I'm just like not a great business person yet. I'm still learning those skills. But I think what I realized, and that was part of my burnout, is finding my superpowers, because I think there was a big crisis of comparing myself to everybody and trying to be everybody, and not really appreciating who I was, because I didn't realize, nobody told me I had superpowers. And so I think that healing process took a while to understand what made me me and do more of me. And I say that because that can be really valuable advice to anybody out there. There's this like silly Instagram I saw, and it's really powerful. I remind my kids of it. Kind of like, there's lions and ants never spend their time trying to be a lion. But why in the human world, in school and other environments, we are trying to make everybody like everybody else? And so I was like, okay, well, I'm either an ant or a lion, and I don't have to like spend my time trying to be an elephant and a gazelle and anybody else. And so I say that because I realized I have an uncanny way with design. I can realize ideas, and it's my purpose to teach other people to do that. From being a design manager for 16 years, I am very well trained in systematically inviting people to innovate and then produce predictable results. And I see that today's society, as we're moving faster, we as people don't have time to be. And I was like, okay, well, I can help people realize projects, do things for fun, spend time after work, on weekends, enjoying themselves, embodying craft, getting right. It's another form of being. It's like, we go do wellness stuff, we go to yoga, we go for walks, we go for hikes. I realized a big part of mental health was us being creative and decorating. And then the more I started doing research and looking, my thesis is all cultures have ornamented, and that we are for the first time coming to a time where minimalism has been very popular, right? We've cheapened everything. Everything's white and black. We were just even talking yesterday in class that our apartments are white because if we keep it white, it's easier to resell it later for more because it has zero personality. And that also is a commentary on our relationship to land, because we are very transient today. Before, people used to like live on their land. They weren't going somewhere. They weren't trying to trade out their apartments. And so they would embellish their home. They would embellish the benches. They would kind of live in that ornamented environment. And so I realized that my purpose is to help people find new lineages of ornament. So it's just not just teaching them my style. I don't want people to follow what I ornament or what I made in a template, which is hard because when we are learning, we do need templates and some starter guides to inspire us. And even today, a lot of times, if I work with a museum, people want my images and my art to attract other people, which I am still trying to process that, because you're just trying to be me, but I don't want you to be me. I don't want you to try to illustrate like me or sew like me or embroider like me. I want you to find you. And so I think that's my work, is to help people find their own aesthetic, find their voice. And embroidery is relatively easy. Embroidery is sewing. I feel like it's a great entryway for people to sew. I started sewing really early. It's a funny story for another time, because it was during the Soviet Union in the 90s, and we were working on these old machines that like would give me a hard time all the time. So I hated the machines and sewing. And I don't recommend people sewing, like learning sewing on the machine can be intimidating, versus learning sewing through hand embroidery can be very delicate and kind of self-paced. And I'm not also attached to embroidery. I realized over this last year, I am actually really more centered on ornamentation and inviting people to think of ornamenting their world. And it can be through wallpaper, it can be through murals, it can be through painting. So it can be interdisciplinary. Embroidery is a great gateway because it's like slow, meditative, it's communal. And the big aspect that was a commentary for me, realizing as a mother of 2 kids and like living long in life and realizing I was in a very isolated phase in my burnout, is that I didn't have people, or I'll say even women of different ages around me, and I was missing out on a lot. And so that's where the work began, and that's to me the mission of Folk Lunch too, is create cross-generational spaces, because our kids are missing out when they don't have grandparents in town. Like some families are living across states, across countries. LA is a pretty diverse urban environment. There's a lot of immigrants, migrants, transient people moving through places. And so I realized older people are isolated. People in motherhood are isolated. People that are single are isolated. People that are divorced are isolated. And so I was like, wow, we have so much love to like share with each other, and so many skills to trade. And you know, the preservation work started to slowly come at me, realizing that the masters I seek in embroidery, in learning and bringing that to the public, they're not on Instagram. The grandmas, the stewards of culture, they're in the hidden nooks of society. And it's really uncomfortable for me as a techie to get off Instagram and my computer and Zoom calls and to go dig for them, because it's like in churches, I have to drive an hour and a half. I have to go to people's homes because they don't do Google Meets. And so there was a lot of like, I'm still in the process of breaking, because working across generations, definitely there's a lot of assumptions I build about my beingness, what it means to be an artist. And so working with people across the spectrum, you realize, ooh, I have so many biases to check and unravel. So I'll stop there. You asked about teaching embroidery and learning embroidery on the go. I just say step into it bravely. And I feel like there's more things I can bring to the table, because I'm not an expert. I'm an expert in design, and I can make anything in fashion and stuff. But I actually am enjoying this angle, specifically looking at embroidery, because I can do things differently and ask things differently, versus when I'm in a position of expert and my ego is really on a high horse, and with that comes some blind spots too. So it's like interesting to be vulnerable and be like, kind of like you shared, that some people I'll encounter have like Jamie, for example, super experienced embroiderer. Some people will have way more embroidery experience specifically, but the way I bring things together is my superpower, connecting different patterns outside embroidery. And to be honest, like, there's so much YouTube tutorials on embroidery. I don't think I'm competing on embroidery videos or tutorials. I think the beauty is the people in the room. That's where the transformation happens.
Yeah, and I feel like you are kind of like talking around this, but I want to kind of zoom in a little bit on your method of hosting embroidery, and you're calling them embroidery socials, right? So And I know now you're offering classes, and it's more like there's more of like a formal pathway that you can go through there. But I was so fascinated when you started doing the embroidery socials because it's free, it's in a public space, it's outdoors, and just talk me through kind of like why you chose that venue for it, and like who is showing up to these spaces and why, if you have that insight.
Yeah, it's interesting. It started organically with the first goal of being. We're trying to be, and then just trying to get our butts in nature, and very much responding to the post-COVID environment. I think, right, I'm like starting the first Eventbrite went out March 24. The year before, in 23, I was in Armenia visiting my dad and doing research at the Armenian National Library on ornament. That's where that's where kind of a lot of fundamental things happened for Folk Lounge. And 23 is just like a year and a half away from post-COVID environment. And so there is this thirst for spending time in public with people because we haven't seen people. And I would also say we are at the height of disconnect and isolation through this kind of like high maturity of technology. And when I put my design hat on, in my design kind of events, I talk about like we are kind of reached the maturity that Steve Jobs gave us with the iPhone and responsive web and crawling on this like software hill. What we don't have is the next mission and vision for the next hill for the next 30 years. So right now we are arriving kind of like at the height of TV era. And so at the same time on the technology front, we're arriving at the height of the software era. We don't really, no one's really like making a big vision, for me at least, in the humanitarian sense of where we're going the next 30 years. So that's something that interests me. But in terms of embroidery socials, 1 second, started jumping. So it was really important to go outside, and I get invites to host in spaces, and I have to fight myself because for me as an organizer, it would be so much easier to host in one place where all my materials are stored. And I think also, you know, there is a challenge there too, because people over a certain age who might have concerns about driving, concerns with vision, mobility issues. So I do think about accessibility, and I do think about trauma-informed design, and I do work a lot on trauma-informed way of teaching. So we recognize that our abilities are different, our hands are different, our processing is different, we all have different styles. And so you do lose people when you host in parks, because sometimes we're on a hill, sometimes you have to walk from the parking lot to the spot we are at. And so that worries me. I still don't have a perfect solution for it. I just, because I'm self-funded, there's like a cap to how much I can think about and how much I can do. I can't drive around with chairs right now or benches. That's not a possibility. But I do spend time thinking about that because I want to be kind and I want to facilitate a comfortable environment. You know, the other quirky, so after hosting for like 6 months at the same park, I was bored. We talked about artists getting bored, and I was like, this needs to be fun because otherwise I'm not going to do this. And so I was like, okay, let's change parks all the time. And it has been so much fun, because I've been in the state of mind of constantly on the lookout, finding new cool spots at LA. And I know a lot of cool new spots. I constantly track a lot of like gardens, places I need to visit. So it's very nourishing. I invite anyone listening to this to start hosting something in parks, because you will become kind of an outdoor expert. And I think we need it. So in LA, we need it because we are in a big urban city. People come here, they're lonely, maybe they work here, maybe they don't have relatives here. For people who moved here from different cultures too, we sometimes get stuck in our immigrant communities. And so an embroidery social is a soft way to interact with other community members. The other thing, we get stuck in our neighborhoods. I live in Pasadena. It's comfortable for me to just sit in Pasadena and be in a radius of 3 miles from my home. The embroidery socials force my butt to go explore other parks in other neighborhoods and meet other neighbors. So I call it like it's discovering the city, but it's also rooting with my city. Because a lot of us have land trauma, like our relationship with land has been disrupted. For me as an immigrant, I realized for many years, my family, my culture, me, myself, my family, me with my kids, I'm trying to replicate recipes in Armenia and Russia that were done on land and a climate that was very different. And here I am trying to like nostalgically recreate, never making time to get to know this land, to look at Native American recipes. And so I do feel like communing with land is a really big ethos of the embroidery socials, because it's an opportunity to look at the bushes and what's blooming right now. It also starts training your eye palette, because as you start embroidering, the first thing you run into is like color decisions, and you're like, oh, like, making color decisions is kind of hard. And I'm like, I don't really know like what to do. And so you start like, as the years have gone by, I like now, like I can't walk and not stare at plants. My kids are like, Mom, not again, because I will stop and like I'll freeze studying the pink gradient on the flower with a little yellow there. And so by forcing us to go outside, we slowly are building the connection to seasons and the connection to the changing landscape, that the flowers at this park are different than the flowers of that park. And I wonder why. And then discovering parks, like I think that's the biggest thing I'm proud of, because people will come and they'll be like, I've lived in this neighborhood for like 20 years, I've never seen this park. And so that's really rewarding.
I want to kind of dig in a little to why you chose embroidery as the vehicle, because you said that you were kind of looking for the inspiration to translate your like cultural heritage into like a physical form of some sort, and to pass it on. I know, I can't remember if you said it in this conversation, but we've talked previously where you said you felt like you were being tapped to kind of carry this heritage forward, and doing that through embroidery was the method that you chose, right? So why do you think embroidery is the way for this to be translated into a community space, as far as like carrying that heritage tradition forward?
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. That's a beautiful question. So I have a funny story, because my grandma forced me to do it. She's dead. So she was talking to me from the other realm, and she would not leave me alone. So yeah, my Armenian grandma, she started telling me like, you have to do embroidery. Like, it's not a choice, you have to do it. And I was like, I don't know. She's like, no, you have to do it. And she was like, the women in your lineage demand that you pass this on to your daughter, because I have a 16-year-old daughter. And even my son, it was kind of like, he needs to see it as a man, to appreciate it, to respect it. And so, right, some things we do, we don't really understand. And the reason I laugh at this story is because when I was in college, my grandma made me a lot of stuff. My Armenian grandma made me all sorts of like dollies and sweaters and Armenian knit stockings that are like wool and super warm. And I just didn't know what to do with them, because they were not cool. And I gave them all to like Goodwill and stuff. So she said I had a debt to pay. So that's my funny story. She was like, oh, you're not going anywhere. You have to recover what you've done. And I was like, okay, guilty. So there is that, and it was very much real. And my daughter's picked up embroidery and does come to occasional embroidery socials, enjoys it. And so I'm grateful, but again, I no expectations. Obviously, we cannot project that on our kids. I feel like their time will come at their own time. I never bothered to learn embroidery when my grandmother was alive, but I was hit with it like a couple years after. So I do feel like the right time is individual and comes for us. Sarah, will you align me? I forgot for a second. I am spacing out. I started with a purpose, but I forgot for a second.
Yeah, I think part of a parallel question was like, is embroidery particularly important in the cultural context that you're trying to kind of like uphold?
I think what I'm realizing is, for me, being interdisciplinary is really important, because I see that I'm a design generalist typically. And so I teach from a perspective of a generalist. Meaning there's communities that are like, for example, there's an Armenian embroidery style called Zhanyak. So there's people that specialize in Zhanyak, and it's Zhanyak only, or needlepoint in the United States, right? There's like needlepoint stores and communities just like only needlepoint. So I feel like what I'm interested in is storytelling and mythology. I'm just using embroidery as a vehicle to connect the dots between cultures. What I find beautiful is when I started looking at ornament and researching cultures, I started to see how ornament is really different, but it has thematic unity about universal values of humanity, balance in energies, connection to land and nature, certain universal truth that withstand culture, or no matter what culture you go to, they are universal truth for all cultures. And I decided that I was really interested in pointing out that unity and that beauty outside of the differences. And to me, ornament became more like the differences, because even there's certain Armenian stitches that have Armenian names, but they also have American names. And so some techniques go under cultural names, but actually, if you look at the name, there is there's a universal stitch for it. And so I realized, it kind of hit me that we were just people before borders developed. And I like that embroidery and thread came many years before. And these traditions were born at a time where we were just like villagers interacting with each other. Because when you start looking also at ornament, there is like certain Mexican styles look like Ukrainian embroidery or Russian embroidery. So there's patterns and similarity. And I was really interested in that patterning happening there, and bringing it back to our unity as humanity, as universal principles, outside of the time of division and wars and so on. So I feel like embroidery, there's a lot in embroidery because there's a lot of cultures, there's a lot of traditions, and it gives us like this really vast, rich environment to explore mythology and concepts, because textiles lead to symbolism, and symbolism a lot of times leads us back to the sky. And so there's a cycle there in the textiles. It's not just like I'm cold and I need a blanket. It's not just I embroidered random flower patterns, the flower of life. It repeats in different ornamental cultures. So I feel like I'm on this journey of really, I feel like most of my making has been detached from meaning. And I would say for a lot of crafters, artisans, designers, in the time we all grew up, have been practicing, a lot of our lineage, there's been a lot of trauma and breaks in the lineages. So we got craft, but without the meaning. And I'm hoping with other people like your work and other people doing the work, museums, other institutions, organizations, we're finally we're trying to find the meaning that was lost ancestrally, and like attach it back so the two can walk in parallel. And I think we find it in our own time, like meaning no shame for younger, Shagoh for crafting without meaning. There was still intuitive things happening, but I think it's delightful to be able to talk to my daughter and to explain her concepts that I was never explained to or exposed. It's powerful.
Completely. And that makes me really curious about who is coming to the socials or to your classes. Like, what is that audience? is it like a mix of ages and cultures like you had hoped for? And then kind of like to piggyback onto that, because I have a feeling you'll talk about it anyway, is like, what is their motivation for coming, and, creating that connection with your work?
Yeah. I mean, I would say I'm a new kid on the block. So I'm still getting to know my audience. And I, to be honest, Sarah, I don't even know how to present my work yet. Like, I say that openly because I think I have to ask myself, I'm like, Shagoh, are you a teacher? And I'm like, I don't know. Did I want to be a teacher? I think I'm going to do something else. And then I'll be like, okay, so are you like a craft studio? I'm like, yeah, I don't know. Like, am I a craft studio? Like, I guess I could be a craft studio, but I don't know if I want to do stuff like that. And then it's like, Shagoh, do you want to like publish patterns and like sell stuff? And I'm like, ooh, inventory. Ooh, like going to the post office. I'm like, no, Shagoh probably doesn't want to manage a store. And so like I say that openly because I think it's like trying to understand where joy and passion come from and what feels really nourishing. And I'll just mention this fear really quickly because I want to inspire other people. I found this weird little character that lives in me that sabotages me. I did this with my previous brand. I love looking at patterns. The neurodivergent side of my brain really likes comparing things and audits and like seeing what I can learn from things. But I realized I destroy myself because I will find all the embroidery stores and all the embroidery stuff, and I'll say, here's an inventory of 200 Instagram accounts doing embroidery. You don't need to, nobody needs you. You do not exist. Your work is not original. And oh my goodness, I finally found this character who lived in my body all these years. I found him probably like recently in the last 6 months. And I literally started to force myself to unsubscribe and unfollow Instagram accounts, not because I don't like or appreciate their work, but part of my traumatized brain does this thing where it will convince me my work is not valid and I'm just a little speck and I just should just like back off the stage. And so I share that because maybe that's something other people will resonate on. And I'm glad I really isolated that character because that person needed to leave my life, because it's like giving yourself the power and permission to be small and learn. And so I would say my demographic is cross-generational. So I'm still learning people. I would say one thing I see in an urban environment, because I think we have different things we deal with in different environments, is that I see people under 35 who don't have needle confidence, or I would even say hand confidence. And so for me, it's really inspiring as a teacher and instructor, facilitator, community organizer to be able to gift them the gift of hand confidence. To me, hand confidence can be many things. It's from drawing, illustration, actually in ornamentation and the way I'm approaching embroidery, we're going to spend a lot of time illustrating, because to me, good embroidery is actually really good illustration skills. It's not hard. Illustration does not equal drawing. Illustration is like faking drawing. But I say that because I think hand intelligence is disappearing, and a lot of folk lounge programming is to bring us back to hand intelligence. So under 35, people grew up with working moms. Maybe people grew up without a grandmother. And so there was just no role modeling. People might not have the skills to fix their jeans, to just do something very basic like running stitch. And so I feel like a lot of embroidery socials, like I love this happens a lot, where like a group of girls will arrive and they're like a friend group. And it's like maybe nobody knows how to sew. And it's like an activity where they drove from Orange County to LA to just do this. And I'm like, yes, because they can walk away and they can fix stuff. I also, in the spaces I work, I invite all genders, and there's so many wonderful men that come. And it's the same thing. I want to have agency. I want to be able to repair my shirt or do something for a friend, like for fun. So removing stigma and removing like gender centricity from the craft, necessarily allowing people to be interdisciplinary and play with the medium if their heart desires. I feel so a lot of times I invite, like, I'm comfortable with people bringing kids or teenagers. I also try to host some of the socials at parks with playgrounds on purpose, because I want to encourage. I know for me, and my motherhood stage was very isolating. I just didn't know. I didn't know how much I would suffer at some point from being so isolated. It just happens. You're busy, you need to make dinner, you need to do homework, it sucks you in. And so I do think about the mother archetype, who might have two kids, and you might have an 8-year-old that wants to go to a playground, and it's a teenager that might sit. I think the hardest ones to get to, and I'm still trying to understand that audience, is women 50 plus, especially post-menopause, because I love their brutal honesty. And I think as a young woman, sometimes I make assumptions. And I'm not young, by the way, I'm 43. What I meant is I'm still learning and admire women over 50, because a lot of times they're post-menopause and they just don't care and they're raw. Because this one time I invited a woman to come to class, and I was like, so you can exhibit your work. And she was like, who cares about exhibiting? I was like, oh, sorry, I projected on you what maybe something I desire. But I love, I have some girlfriends. I have a Palestinian girlfriend. It's like her grandma just like is a baddie, and she just does Palestinian embroidery for herself. Like, she's not necessarily like dying to teach a craft to somebody else. And so I say that is because learning intergenerationally to work with people, you are an anthropologist a little bit, right? Because you are centered in one place, but you have to expand your perspective. I think for me, the biggest work was trying to understand all the levels. So I had to really quickly, since last fall, to figure out all the levels I'm serving, because as an artist or as a teaching facilitator, my system would get a lot of demands because I'm jumping between different levels. And so I'm having people who are like what I call artisan level, where they have a body of work, and they're maybe trying to exhibit and pitch galleries. And then I have somebody who is a hobbyist, but a hobbyist typically doesn't feel like they're a real artist. So there's work we can do on the hobbyist to move them in that trajectory. Some people are ready for commercial work. You and I went through that phase where you want to sell stuff. You want to sell stuff at markets, maybe on Etsy, other online platforms. There's people who want to publish. And so I think for me, the large work in the last few months has been trying to refine my levels so I can curate the right classes and workshops and have the right language. So for example, for beginner class, which is embroidery, so I realized there's drop-in classes, which are no obligation. It's kind of fly-by embroidery. But I say that because it's kind of stressful for me, because I want to show you cool stuff, but I don't know what your technical capacity is. So I have to do something fun and engaging that maybe brings you in deeper into embroidery, but doesn't overwhelm your nervous system and your hands. And then on top of that, you have level 1 embroidery, which is like a young designer who doesn't know what they're good at. So you want them to try a bunch of stuff, versus a more senior practitioner who has lots of ideas and just needs time and accountability to implement all their ideas. So it's like all these different user archetypes, and you're trying to guide them towards different learning goals. Is that helpful? I think that was like a big wowie for me in the last 2 years. Yeah.
So I'm thinking too about like, and you've kind of talked about this as like, there's the challenge of this knowledge getting lost via technology, right? Like people just aren't interested in working with their hands in some ways, but there's also the challenge of like people who hold this knowledge they don't think that it's something that is worthy of passing down. So there's kind of like this disconnect where maybe there's kind of a misconception that it's old-fashioned or something along those lines, right? So I'm wondering if like what do you do to kind of get people mentally over that barrier of some of these more like quote unquote traditional textile styles or practices or something like that, in order to kind of like get the buy-in from them that it's something important that should be kind of like upheld or carried on.
Yeah, I think that's the hard part, and I love that question because that's really where we are doing that hard programming work to connect in a more modern way with the practice. Sorry, I had to move to the couch because I had to plug in the power. So thank you for giving me a sec there. Sarah, I would say, so I think it's going to take a tribe of, so there's like there's maybe like 3 questions in there, because I think that's what my grandmother told me. She told me I'm the bridge. She said, you are meant to turn around, look up at the masters, receive, turn around and give it to your daughter's generation. And so I understood that I am just a transient bridge. And so that's the preservation work, and that even though I don't know, that doesn't mean I can't learn. All of us can learn, and I welcome as many of us to learn as we can, because it cannot be a few people. So that was one thing around preservation, that it's like you're not it's not, there's nothing about Shagoh or I'm not special. There's many of us that are bridges, whether it's literature, whether it's engineering. Knowledge flows in the universe through the elders. And so at some point we must look up to the elders to get their knowledge so they can pass on forward. And we continue to be the stewards for that next time period. So that was one. I think for us designers and artists, because you're a designer and artist, there's really fun work in programming, in the embroidery programming. So like what I'm saying is being a small entrepreneur is hard, and there's a lot of things you don't have time for, and you know that, and especially on top of that, being a parent still. I would say folk lounge is like 1/5 of my full vision. Even the website is like 1/5 of actual what I see. That's like the ugly version. Right now what's up is the ugly version of what I know I can do. And so I say that because for me, that's where the universe told me my tech background is my superpower, because I can make craft cool. I can serve it through good user experience, through modern checkout, through a good website. Again, I don't have as much time as I wanted to make the website perfect, but still I can bring a lot of my tech skills, and it's like the universe needs you in this pocket of place right now. It needs you to make a difference here. And so I feel like what I realized Folk Lounge is innovating on format. So I think to make embroidery or craft relevant today, to continue preservation, it needs to be easy and accessible. That means we do need to exist spaces where people are, like whether it's Instagram or websites, and have modern checkouts and have good websites and good videos. And so format, I think, is important. That's a door. The second thing is programming. Like, for example, I'll share a couple classes I'm thinking about, and they're different doors. I'm actually going to send an email. So I'm not sure. Are you familiar with Rizzo printing? Rizzo printing is this beautiful Japanese printers from the 80s. And so I'm developing a workshop that's in R&D right now. That's going to be Rizzo embroidery. So it's like taking that aesthetic and trying to do embroidery. So that's one workshop. I took an Armenian workshop with Svaz embroidery. It's a half cross stitch embroidery. And I want to develop a new style of Svaz on black. I just want, my intuition is like, try it. So this is where I'm talking about creating new ornamental lineages that feel relevant and current, remix and adapt. The third workshop that's in the R&D is basically like costume design, styling, and ornamentation for musicians. And so like LA is the place for music and a lot of entertainment industry. And so if you're a young musician who just looks normal, how can I help you, give you some sewing skills, some styling skills, some embroidery skills, but throw in a little, like you're creating your archetype, your avatar. And so these are all examples of different entry points with interesting programming. I think when I'm very proud of the LA art scene, community scene, craft scene. I'm very grateful to the local institutions. I audited deeply for 2 to 3 years, everything that was happening. My biggest critique is we lack depth in textiles work, and we lack continuity. And so I realized I want Folk Lounge to have depth. So I'm coming to with some biases, and I have to be careful. I don't want it to be intellectual. That's not my goal. I do want it to have meaning. So I'm learning how to strike that balance where I want it to be critical and thoughtful and historical. I don't necessarily want to write a PhD while I'm doing it. So I don't want to go, kind of like you said, I don't want to go way academic, because that feels dry and historical. It doesn't speak to me. So I need to get the voice and tone right. But I want it to be intellectually stimulating. I don't want it to be intellectual and off-putting and intimidating. I want it to be intellectual and creative, like hands-on. And but I also want to develop people's craft, like, meaning I'm not scared to really give someone an embroidery project for 3 months. But that's really scary to me, because in the world of templates and kits and everything, like quick and like Amazon craft stuff where you just like buy blobs and do something in 3 seconds, I'm competing with attention economy. And sometimes I'm like, oh my God, I'm asking for too much. Are they going to have patience to work on a project for a year? No, I haven't really given projects away for a year, but I'm saying that the skills I'm building are depth, and they're multi-year. It's a multi-year journey. When I look at these masters that I meet from different cultures, I realize I am like nothing. I'm a speck with my skills. There's so much more for me to journey in my craft practice and deepen. And so I think I'm still trying to figure out, like, I don't want to cheapen it, but I do have to figure out how to brand it, how to speak to it. How do I sell someone on a 3-year craft journey instead of like an instant weekend, blah, 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 right? And so I feel like there's a lot of drop-in experiences in the city. But what I decided that what I'm trying to stand for is, how do I grow a person in their relationship to craft? So it's like a different value proposition. And I think in general, as society across United States and other countries, we are moving to the right things. We're moving closer to nature. We're moving to respecting indigenous cultures and seeing all the traditions. We're moving to like widening towards kindness and humanity and being trauma informed. So I feel like a lot of there's a lot to celebrate.
I have had this conversation with a couple of other people too, where and I feel the same way about the work that I'm doing, where I'm trying to strike a balance between, like, if I will be honest, like, if I never got paid, I would be fine, because I feel like the work is that important, right? But at the end of the day, like, I can't I can't commit to something without any sort, so like striking that balance of like, how do you navigate and operate within like a hyper capitalist society while doing something that you want to be meaningful and values driven? I think is that big question and tension that I think a lot of people in this realm, including myself, are trying to navigate.
Me too.
Me too. Yeah, I want to be mindful of time, because I know that we had budgeted 1 hour. So I
Yes.
wondered if you've kind of hinted at like your path forward, but if you were speaking to someone who was like, this is really inspiring to me, or I know, I have this like family tradition of some sort of textile related craft or tradition or technique or something like that I would really like to, make sure gets passed on to the next generation, or that I want more people to know about, like, what would be kind of your elevator pitch to them, as far as just like, I would just say do it, right? Like, that's kind of where I'm at, is like, I just want people to just start, But what would you say to people who are kind of like in that same moment where you found yourself being like, I just feel like I have to do this?
I see. Yeah, I think first thing comes to mind is follow your quirky callings, right? Because I think that uniqueness in your authentic voice is called from the quirky moments. I never thought I'd be doing research at the Getty and the Huntington Museum. Like, not ever in the world would I like think of that. It just happened randomly because I started going to libraries very methodically. In 2023, I would just go to random libraries with my kids at night when we had light homework days, and slowly just had more questions, and it kept going. And these days I end up on random websites, random textile archives. There's so many cool, we're so lucky. We're so lucky. Like, I just want to like send this like massive energy wave of love and happiness, because there's like so many cool things out there online for us. And that actually too, what I realized, Folk Lounge, I want to help museums and archives, because they work so hard to get so much money to digitize all these records, maintain them, label them, relabel them, because now we have biases in metadata. So a lot of things are getting relabeled through non-colonial gaze. And nobody comes to the archives. So I think prompt number one is, I would say, knock on the door of your local museum. Look up a little library you hear of. I was Googling a book in San Diego and found this really cool random private archive. And I'm just like, yay, I'm going to explore it. So like, look up an archive, a museum near you, just to get inspired, to see if energy returns. I also speak to like finding treasures. The right treasure for you will call you. And so I feel like I want to, like, that's what I've been talking about for a year and a half, is open archives, and this idea of like, so like a lot of us go to AI for images. Like, I'm bored with AI images. Like, can we not do these ugly illustrations? And then stock photos. Like, what's worse, looking at a website with ugly stock photos? What if we go to the archives? Like, again, there's like tons of content in the archive. So that's number two. And number three, I would say look up what ornamental lineage you come from. So in the United States, I'll share this. So this is actually really profound, and this connects back, Sarah, to the questions on demographics and the kind of people I'm getting. A scenario that has come up over the last 2 years is I will have a white American woman who will email me as an architect, and typically she will say, I have no culture. I have no ancestry. I have nothing that I can explore and claim. And I'm like, that's not true. Meaning that this person in that position has, through lineage, lost stories and feels alone. And I went through this process because in my both Russian and Armenian lineage, I'm missing lots of stories. And so I had to create a concept of a basket. And I realized I have a basket. My basket is full of things. It's, again, trauma in our lineage, family trauma, country trauma, all sorts of trauma. And some things I will not be able to restore in my culture and my lineage. There's things maybe not because of the Armenian genocide, I just will not find in Armenian culture, or in Russia, maybe because of Soviet Union and oppression for many years under a regime that would kill its own people, silence the majority. I might also not reclaim certain things. So I realized I can go to, like, I was very much inspired by Indian mythology, and I found this book on goddesses in Indian culture, and then I found there's other goddess mythologies in other cultures, and then I found, oh, there's goddesses in Russian mythology too. No one ever told me about that. And so that was like a really beautiful 360 moment to discover goddesses within my culture.
One sec. I feel like maybe your microphone has gotten blocked because it's starting to get really muffled.
Muffled. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there we go. That's better.
Is that better? I see.
Mhm.
Okay. The laptop.
Sorry to interrupt you.
I'm glad it's better. Yeah, and so that 360, and so what I realized, and this is part of the program's work, is exploring cultures, because other cultures, like I do hula dancing. There's things that hula, allow, learning about Hawaiian and Polynesian cultures was something that I could never learn from my culture. And so there's a process of repair. The basket, we all can repair our baskets through learning about concepts, of cultures. And so to a person who feels like that, right? Like, first of all, I feel tremendous pain when somebody says, I have no culture, I have no roots. I feel pain. Let me help find you some concepts to start rooting, to start belonging, and positioning, because basically we have no story, so we are disoriented. And so I think the orientation for all of us starts with starting to collect things in our basket. So and again, it's not a specific journey. You can start with looking up ornament. If you're passionate about ornament for a specific culture, jump into and try it, right? Like, if I'm interested in Indonesian ornament, what's wrong with me, like, trying to learn more about it? Also, if you like, at Craftation, we did the workshop on linen and lamplight, and it's about like Slavic ornament, and it's a really large chunk of land, right? Because it includes like Poland, Romania, Belarus, Ukraine, Russian lands. Like, it's a really large territory. And several people were like, "Oh, my family is Romanian. I never looked up Romanian ornament." Or like, "Oh, my family's Polish. I never thought to look up Polish ornament." And so I think following threads like that, and that's where your agency and your voice starts calling you on your personal journey.
I love that. Yeah, I love that. I completely agree, because I think that we get disconnected, especially now, the way that everything is kind of like artificially, we're the artificial, like, aspect of deadlines, and you got to do more, and like hustle culture and all that stuff. I think it's very easy to get disconnected from the meaning in like the things that we're doing in the day to day. So I love the basket metaphor so much,
Yeah.
obviously.
Well, but like, have you felt that you had to do that over the last few years? Is like a little, yeah, I'm just curious, even as you're writing the articles.
Yeah, I think one, I actually did just take so my heritage is Greek and Norwegian, and I just took a Norwegian embroidery class a couple of months ago, which, kind of what you were saying, like, my whole life, my grandmother had been trying to hand me these heirlooms of these embroidered linens, and I didn't give them to Goodwill. I'm not shaming you, but I still have them because I'm a hoarder. I just stored them away and didn't really think twice about them because, they're old fashioned or whatever. And I think as I've gotten older, my appreciation for the technique and the labor and the history and the context that it comes from, and the need that it was fulfilling for, people in that culture, it becomes more apparent. And I think that that's just part of, like, going through life, as you start making these connections a lot easier. But yeah, I think for me personally, like, I keep coming back to textiles because there's not a single person on this planet that isn't using them daily. And once I kind of had that realization and started really learning about, like, how long we as humans have been making textiles and how it's become so deeply embedded, almost, I believe it's embedded in our DNA. I believe that that's why we feel called to make stuff with fibers, why it's so satisfying to dip fabric in dye and watch it come out. Like, it feels like Like there's no feeling like it, right? And I like, so just kind of like getting people connected to that is I feel more like myself when I'm not just learning about it and like talking about it in the way that I'm doing it, but just getting my hands dirty in a sense, or not, if you're trying to have a clean white hardanger embroidery surface, but just kind of like it's almost like channeling that knowledge through your fingertips, whether it's through embroidery or knitting or weaving or just like doing little dye experiments in mason jars or whatever it is. That's something that I keep seeing with people, is like that becomes the channel for like wanting to kind of connect more deeply with these traditions.
Yeah, I'll share something that came up yesterday, and I want to also comment on. Like, I think sometimes I want to comment on how women learn, and I don't just separate one gender, but I feel I see that as something important to comment on, to help women. First, I was going to say what you said with channeling, and I'm slowly loosening into that experimental process. So much of our life demands predictable results, which is efficiency, adulting, that we forget how to play. And like after 3 years, I'm just finally arriving at playing where I can do something and enjoy it without a result. I was pretty disturbed with the accumulation of experiences where it was really hard for me. And we were doing an illustration exercise yesterday in class. And so with that illustration experiment, we basically very quickly run out of ideas of like drawing flowers, smiling faces, because it's a lot of times at the beginning coming from your mind and it's a place of control. And then after about like 30 minutes, you get to a place where you're like, I'm bored. I don't know what to draw. I want to give up. And that's the threshold where actually creativity comes, because then conscious mind can just start expressing itself versus this mind controlling what you're drawing. And so I love this experiment because we realize how our eye and our hand are not trained for ornamentation. It's like we realize we're underdeveloped, and we almost like realize, oh, I need to make it a goal to start studying flowers or shapes of leaves, because I need a larger vocabulary for ornamenting and expression. So that's one thing. It's kind of like what you said. How do we make time during the week to get to a place where we can run out of ideas of the conscious brain and give our unconscious expression? And that's where you're saying, like, to dedicate time to craft, you get to that place of channeling, which is pure expression. It's not trying to please Instagram. It's not trying to exhibit at a gallery. It's just expressing. And then the second part I was going to share too is you can tend to learn in safe environments with a lot of kindness and reinforcement in community settings. And then it's like, I feel like then we start to have a lot of something, and then it's like spilling out, and then we start gifting people, our relatives, our friends, and then everyone's like, oh, you were so good. And then like we like finally have the confidence to actually charge money for that. And I realized that I went through that multiple times, still going through that. And the other thing too is I realized I'm learning to be a beginner again, because as a design executive at some point of my life and as a mom, I become an expert, and an expert is traumatized because they're also trying to please a lot of stakeholders. So I realized, oh crap, even though I'm really experienced, I am still coming back to the beginner. I need to be around beginners, and I need to learn from the beginners, because there's playfulness I need to relearn. Like if I want to publish a book, there's too much calculation I'm doing about the other, and I need to recenter on me as an artist with expression. So I just wanted to share that, because I think a lot of part of me why I'm very excited to be able to offer ongoing classes, because even the hardest part of me right now that I'm doing. It's the work that's ongoing. It's like little muscle practice week to week. It's like I can't do that in a 2-hour workshop. I can't do that in a 4-hour workshop. It just doesn't work like that. It's like, and I say that like when I was doing belly dance in 2 years, hula dance in 2 years, and it's like finally my hands can move now. Like I don't know what I was doing 2 years ago, but I think I'm like, wow, I'm so glad I stuck around because it's not things you can just like swing daily. And so just like welcoming whatever that is. I just don't want to. One of the things I realized too is I become very capitalistic if I say embroidery is the answer for everything. If you're not doing embroidery, something's wrong with you. Right? I hate marketing jargon like that, right? It's like universe favors multiplicity. So be full. A lot of I was overworking. I was not full. I was not multiplicity. I was just like a tech Shagoh, and it's like that's my personality. And universe was like, bam, bam, bam. No, you're going to be multiplicity. You're going to learn about herbalism. You're going to learn about embroidery. And so I think what you and I are coming to in our wise age is also multiplicity. That's what we have fun telling each other and talking about.
I completely agree. Okay, well, before we wrap, let's just remind people where they can find you and get in touch and come take one of your workshops or come to a social.
Oh, thank you. So I'm about to launch social virtually. So you're welcome to come try it. I think the new format I'm trying to develop will be friendly because there's so many cool creatives across the world, and I'm bummed that they're not in LA. So I definitely want to nurture and give people a place to commune and express. Yeah, I am folklounge.com, and the weekly classes are running in person, online, and through replay. Yeah, there's more workshops coming up and open to ideas and collaborations. Just thoughts, anything, welcome. And thank you, Sarah, for the lovely question and the space to hang out with my good friend and also talk about things we are both really passionate about.
I know. I feel like we could just do this literally all day. So so I'm sure we'll have another conversation down the road, but thank you so much for taking the time to meet today, and I can't wait to see you again.